Hey, you talking to my girl?
Oh shit, here we go.
Well, she was just my ride.
My grandma's Buick could smoke that piece of shit trailer trash.
What about your daddy's Viper?
This beast's got 500 horsepower and a Borley exhaust system. It does 0 to 60 in like 4.3 seconds.
That's about right. That's about right. Yeah.
Wow. You can read the brochure.
Do you expect me to talk?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode 177 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host, Becca, and as always, joined by my fellow co-drivers, Chris and Dave. How are you both?
Good evening, folks.
I just want to sort of like pitch that thing in Austin Powers where it just sort of has to, it transitions into a different place. So you go the
Yeah, I like the fact this is a bit like Hello Hello. They're all talking English to each other.
Good morning.
It's just an offensive accent away. Yes.
Well, there we are. I've got all these lovely names that I can mangle now.
Away you go then. So what are we covering tonight?
Yeah, so amazingly enough, we are trying to review Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, starring nobody from the previous movies.
That's literally true this time, I think.
Literally nobody. Obviously, one character we'll see many times again.
But that's a cameo, isn't it? One of the. Oh yeah. No, I know what you mean. But the returning character is an uncredited cameo at the end. So you are right to say there's no carried over stars here.
No. Well, potentially two, but apart from that. But yeah, anyway, apart from the cameo by Vin Diesel, starring Sonny Chiba.
I know.
Legend. I completely forgot he was in this film.
So did I.
Also starring Bow Wow. Do you remember when he was Lil Bow Wow? You know, your old one.
Yeah. Well, he was kind of intermediate Bow Wow at this stage. He was about 19, yeah.
Yeah, I think he dropped the Lil part, didn't he?
Middling Bow Wow.
Middling Bow Wow.
Yeah.
So
Bow Wow Kun, we call him.
So was he just Bow Wow at this point, or was he?
I think so.
He was
I think he was
beyond
Bow Wow.
Little Bow Wow was his kid's name, wasn't it? Or his name as a kid, I mean.
Yeah.
I think because when he brought his album out, wasn't he like 13, 14? And he was Lil Bow Wow, but
yeah, this is like
then he
6
kind of
years
matured
after.
and became Bow Wow.
Yeah, and he is credited as Bow Wow here.
Yeah.
So yeah, at least he went with a sensible name.
I wonder why he looked familiar. I was like, oh, I recognise him. Oh my gosh.
Imagine if this was a British film, he would have to be called like Woof Woof.
Doggo, Popper.
Dogging.
I said doggo, not dogging.
I thought you said dogging. Sorry.
No. No,
All right, anyway. So carry on.
Find out the guts.
Who's in this apart from like Bow Wow?
Bow Wow. Yeah, also starring Sung Kang, Lucas Black, Zachary Ty Bryan, Natalie Kelly, Leonardo Nam, Jason Tobin. We'll see him later on in Fast 9. Brian T. and Keiko Kitagawa, who I know from Sailor Moon. And I mentioned this on our chat thread off air. Satoshi Somabuki as exceedingly handsome guy. Now I want to know, does he make exceedingly good cakes?
No, but it's exceedingly handsome.
That's his name. He doesn't have
the
the
word
name.
exceedingly. And I don't even know
handsome guy.
the film. I don't know if they're. At no point was I watching this film and thought, "Fuck me, he's handsome." That must be.
Satoshi Somabuki.
I mean, I know I'm not particularly into men, but I can spot somebody who's meant to be above average handsomeness.
The thing is, though, I think like in regards to this film, like I've never been to Japan, so I don't know if this is the case, but you seem sort of great, like handsomeness in terms of like how fancy your haircut is. So,
Yeah,
so if you got like a really like sort of flashlight looking like spiked up mullet, then you're really, really like
So Chris Tucker from The Fifth Element just would have been jumped immediately.
Yeah, pretty much.
An amazing haircut.
With his big penis-based hair or hair-based penis. We've had this conversation. I don't know which is the correct term for it.
There's a spoonerism.
Yeah. I didn't see this. I didn't see this film till 2013. As I said before, I was going through the box set. I got to this one, felt like a direct-to-DVD film. We start in another city again.
It kind of is, really.
Yeah, it is really,
Yeah, it is a good
and it
TV
is,
movie.
and it is the lowest grossing of the series. Well, it's got no star power in it at this stage.
No.
I say at this stage because whether some of the hardcore fans of the series would turn up for Han now, you know what I mean? But not at this stage because it's his
Roger Ebert
debut.
gives it 3 stars.
I don't know how.
I don't know
but
why I'm
we'll come
looking at
to
him,
it.
but never mind.
I don't know why you keep going back to Roger Ebert, but I mean, this world.
I just like his reviews, but he gives it 3
I
stars.
like Roger Ebert, to be fair, but I mean, he does have some. If you write thousands of reviews, you're going to have. Well, not
It's
only
like-
is everybody, not everybody, not only has everybody got a different opinion anyway, and those opinions are often equally valid. But even if a critic's taste roughly jibed with mine, once upon a, if you write thousands of reviews, you are going to write the odd massive outlier. But there you go. No, so my history with the film, as with 2, is very, very light. I saw it 7 years ago in a run of films. It didn't stand out. What about you guys?
Yeah, I don't think I saw this. I don't remember seeing it at the cinema. And I've probably never seen it up until now, I don't think, but no memory. So,
Well,
and yeah,
that,
like last week,
that
it's a
speaks
film.
volumes.
Yeah, like last week, it is a film.
Well, yeah, because you might be tricked into thinking you've seen it because of what happens to Han. We get that in flashbacks in other films.
We do, and then, yeah, he pops up in the next few films, doesn't he? And then we'll see him again when Fast 9 is
Well,
eventually revealed.
We will, to anyone listening along with us, we'll explain all that as we go through, because I don't think it's a spoiler. As soon as,
No.
within the first scene of like the next film, you'll see him. So watching this, assuming you're listening to this having seen the film or at least read a plot synopsis, we're quite happy to just spill that, spoiler alert, he dies in this film, but he then appears in about the next 3.
It is the
I
same
believe
character,
it-
isn't it? It's pretty
And
much
it's the same character.
the same person.
But we'll come on to why all that is in a minute, or in a bit anyway. Chris, did you watch this at the time or a few years after, or what?
No, I had no interest in this because obviously I didn't watch the second one. I had no interest in this because I mean, I'm not really sure this even had a theatrical release over here. It just, I think it might have gone straight to DVD. I'm not entirely sure, but
I don't know because I wasn't interested.
but it was definitely that kind of vibe anyway. I mean, like when you have like a sequel with none of the recurring cast, it just
We've used the example of you've used the example of the American Pie direct-to-DVD films before, and obviously they're very different films. So there'll be people listening to this who smile at that as an idea, but you're bang on in terms of its relationship to the main series. It's in the same continuity, but it's all cheaper actors in a different location. But you've got a cameo from one of the people from the main series, just as Stifler's dad turned up. Not Stifler's dad. What's he called? Thingy's dad.
Oh, Jim's dad.
Jim's dad. Sorry,
Yeah, it's Jim's dad, yeah.
Jim's dad turns up in all of those films. I've not seen any of them, but you just look at them and go, I don't want to watch that. I often refer to when they replaced the main 2 in like the Dukes of Hazzard for a season. It's a bit like that. Yeah, I can't imagine. But I have heard people say, "Oh, that's the best one." I've heard people say that as late as like the 5th film that Tokyo Drift
Really?
was the best of the series. Yeah, and I don't see it.
I kind of heard the opposite. Like a friend of mine
I've
is like
heard
really, really into these films, and he's pretty sure that this is the worst one. But again, that's just his his opinion.
Yeah.
He's welcome to it.
I will say this, and it's probably a bit more like, take credit to Justin Lin, but it doesn't. It isn't like bad. It's not like, oh my god, this is just unwatchable. It feels very competently done, and then and one of the things that sort of struck out at me because compares to like the second film where we see every single race. At the midway point we see like a race between him, like the main guy, Sean, I think it is, and we want to say the antagonist's annoying second hand, right? There's a race between them. Yeah.
In Bond terms, the henchman.
Yeah, right. Now, in most films, and I think in like if you're going by the previous Fast films, we would see that race outright out flat, but it kind of doesn't bother. It kind of blends it in with a montage. So
Yeah.
and it kind of I think it kind of understands what's important. It actually sort of it does try and follow character and storytelling rather than just sort of like, oh well, here's another action sequence, here's another action sequence. It kind of like, it knows what's important. It knows like, that guy's annoying, we're not really interested about who wins that race because we know Sean, the main character, is probably going to win that race anyway. All we're bothered about is just seeing him win and seeing the annoying henchman guy throw a hissy fit over it. And it just gives us that, because that tells us everything we need to know, and we don't really need to see the race. We see him getting better, and it ends with him doing that, and that's enough, till we get to like the main one at the end. And
it
I think
feels much more like a film. It feels like a film where
there you are.
Feels like a film. All right.
Feels like a film. Good night, folks. No, it feels like a film where you've got like a less accomplished cast, but apart from that, the main difference is it's just a subject that maybe me and Chris, for example, aren't that interested in. But if you were really into this as a concept and everything, you'd probably be enjoying it because it's quite well made.
Yeah. I think one of the stronger things is, though, it hasn't got really much to prove. So it just kind of, there's a bit of a, well, we don't have to be too flashy because we just get on with it, and I think that's to its credit.
That adds to the feel of it being a bit direct to DVD, but not from a quality perspective, more from like direct to DVD films, if they even exist anymore in that regard. They're not normally as flashy because you're not marketing them in the same way.
Yeah.
So, the second film would have played very heavily on the return of Paul Walker and a couple of big music stars and all the rest of it. And the plot of that film didn't matter. It felt very much like we need to make another Fast and Furious film because the first one did all right. I think this is better than what we got last week, and certainly there were bits last week I was laughing at, like the eyes, the close-ups on the eyes and stuff. There's none of that in this. It's nowhere near as flashy. There's bits I laugh at, but that's more to do with the iconography of A, this era, and B, this like world. Because I'm frequently in the 3 films we've had to date. It gets less so when Toretto comes back because he's got slightly classier tastes anyway, but every time they're introduced to like their new car and virtually masturbate themselves silly, in all of the first 3 films I've looked at them and gone, that looks tacky as fuck, because they've got these garish horrible colours and ugly spoilers, and I just think like you have to have a certain mindset about this world to be into that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Bauer this time round, he's got not this time round, but he's got the Hulk car, hasn't he? He's got the amazing bright green.
It looks
Hulk
horrible.
car.
It looks real shit. But, like, if you were in and of this world, that's kind of what these cars look like, so fair enough. I don't know. No,
this is it. I mean, I kind of thought this film, I think, Chris, you've got a very good point. This film is very kind of perfunctory. I mean, it's done... Justin Lin is a very accomplished director. It kind of seems, to me, aesthetically, it seems like less flashy. I kind of thought, being set, in Tokyo, where, they are known for... I'm going to look it up because I don't want to pronounce it wrong or say it's the wrong thing, but they do have a culture of customizing their cars, and especially like Japanese car, like muscle cars, are really popular as well. And they also, have a custom of like customizing like cars, like trucks and vans. Is quite a big popular thing as well. I'm saying Tasha, but I don't think that's right. So I'll just quickly look it up.
I would have, if you'd said to me, there's a Fast and Furious film. Let's imagine I'd seen the first 2, which obviously I hadn't at the point when this was released. And if you said there's going to be a Fast and Furious film, I would have expected it to be almost a bit more garish, being in Tokyo, because it's very heavily populated. It's very big, and there's a lot of light, a lot of neon and stuff.
Yeah, that's certainly the image that we have of the West.
Actually, what I got from this film was almost a stripping out of a lot of the culture. Having not been to Tokyo, I don't know how accurate that is. But if it wasn't for the fact that many of the supporting casts are Asian, this could just be another American city.
No, this is. I wonder like how much of it was filmed in Tokyo or other parts of Japan, or indeed, in America. No, I was right. Yeah, it's
You didn't feel like you were getting a glimpse of Japan, did you?
No, I think to be honest, it's more about the underworld, really, isn't it? I mean, you kind of get a glimpse of Japan through like the narrow streets, like the old pubs, and especially they go past a few like pachinko parlors, which is probably like the national pastime apart from horse racing. I mean, it's one of those things I've always wanted to go there, and I mean, I'm not an expert, but I'm quite interested in the culture and things like that.
I know nothing of this world, Becca. I'm very uneducated on the Far East in general, but yeah, Japan particularly.
Watch a lot of anime, read a lot of manga. There we are. That's the way in. But yeah, as I say, yeah, they do have. I just looked up.
Tasha.
Yeah, the tentacle.
I just said sorry because I actually posted something to our group there that I meant to post to a different group, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, no, it's yeah, but I mean, it's not really a complaint. It's just, I mean, really, the only thing that distinguishes this world from like the United States is like drifting. Drifting's a thing when they get there.
Yeah, hence Tokyo Drift, definitely. But yeah, I kind of thought it was going to be more flashy. But I think because it's more about the like the underworld. Obviously, Study Chiba is head of the Yakuza. So I get a sense more it's more kind of like grimy about the underworld and how like drifting is not illegal, but it's very much like a subculture. And again, it's something that literally happens underground in a car park. And I think that's kind of why it's all about the average people, the sort of like the working class, if that makes sense, rather than being kind of really bright, flashy. I think there was a Cars short film that is set in Japan, and obviously that's kind of very flashy, lots of bright neon lights, lots of stereotypical Asian type characters. But here, obviously you can't really compare the two. But here it's the opposite. It's literally kind of about the street, and very pared back in that respect. But yeah, sorry, Chris, can you carry on?
I was just going to say, it sort of like adds more of a fish out of water element to it. I mean, the idea of like drifting is introducing like a different style because you're in a different location where things are a lot more like boxed in. So it's a different style of doing things. So it introduces you this completely different world, which gives you like different flavour. That's probably why it feels a bit more like a straight to TV, because it feels very much more of a spin-off. Hence why you have no characters, completely different style, completely different location.
I can see that there's some. I'm trying not to damn it with faint praise or patronise it, and that's difficult in some respects. But take this, as genuine as I'm saying it. There's at least some sort of intrigue for the fact that like he gets there, and your skills mean shit. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like Men in Black. He can be the most accomplished guy in the world, but when you join Men in Black, those skills don't actually mean anything. All they mean is you've probably got the ability to learn this other skill set. And it's the same with driving. He's a brilliant driver, but actually to win there, he needs to be able to do this thing that he was never taught in the United States.
But it also adds a little bit of element because it's because we introduced him, he's very reckless. So even like even as a driver, he's actually not probably that good because he's very haphazard.
It's more that he's got big balls than anything else. Yeah.
So, but like this new way kind of like teaches him to be more disciplined, in a way. So it kind of it helps towards that character. It helps towards from the character standpoint, it makes sense.
So in general terms, what do we think of this like lead character? Because we do see him again in a future week briefly. I won't spoil it at the moment because I'm not sure if Becca has seen that film. But he turns up again, kind of in the events of this film, but actually about 8 or 9 years older.
I probably have seen it a while ago, but I haven't seen it recently.
He does look older, but he definitely looks like a much older man. But he also looks the same in a bizarre kind of way. The thing I likened it to off air when we were talking was Rosamund Pike. Rosamund Pike looks exactly the same as she did in Die
She still looks the same as she did as she was 19.
But she doesn't look 23 either. She was 23 in that film, and she's 41 now. She looks 41, but she looks the same. It's that really subtle aging.
She's got really good genes, I think, is what it is.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is she doesn't look as youthful as she did in that film. She doesn't. But she still looks the same kind of, and Lucas Black's a bit like that. But
he hasn't changed that much.
He doesn't become a thing in this series. He's just the lead in this one. What did we make of him, actor and character?
I don't think I've seen him before.
I don't think I ever saw him again, apart from when he...
No, I'm sad to say I'm not familiar with his work.
I'm looking him up now to see if I've seen him in anything.
He's mostly recognisable actually as a child actor because he was in a TV show called American Gothic. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
Oh,
I've heard
gosh.
that
Okay.
came out while I was at university because I
Oh,
remember
God.
I went off to watch something one night and someone else I was with said,
It was in the
"No,
X-Files.
I'm off. American Gothic starts tonight," and they went to watch that instead. Gary Cole was in it. Midnight Caller. Yeah, I remember it, but I never watched it though. I just remember it starting.
I remember it being on when I was at, and then it's just one of those things that it looked like a cool TV show, and I've seen a few episodes, not all of them, but
there's a lot of hype around it, but it only ran for one series, so whatever hype there was around it fizzled out fairly quickly.
Yeah,
And now he does NCIS apparently, which I've not seen. I've seen
much...
bits of it, but not all the way through.
Sorry, Becca, what?
No, he's in NCIS apparently.
Yeah, I've never seen that. There's a few things I'm looking at on the list that I've seen, but like he either didn't stick out or I don't remember him or whatever. Like I've definitely seen Sling Blade. It's a good film. I've definitely seen Cold Mountain. I think I've seen All the Pretty Horses, although I wouldn't swear to it. And as I go down through the list, there's things on there I've seen. Not massive amounts, but I do want to see 42 because that's Chadwick Boseman. That's Jackie Robinson. But yeah, I've seen some episodes of CSI Miami, but I don't recall him from anything else.
No, I mean, I say you're mostly recognisable as a child actor because you see him go, oh yeah, he's that kid. I mean, he was in the X-Files movie as well.
Never seen it.
Oh, okay. I think I might have seen that when it came out.
But he was like the kid who comes into contact with aliens at the beginning. But yeah, again, you kind of like see him as a kid. You know, he looks kind of similar. But as a an adult actor, he doesn't have a lot of charisma. He's fine, but I don't know. There's just something just not quite there with him. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's his look. He just looks a bit too plain, or whether his tone just comes across as just a bit too, I don't know.
I find him quite level actually for for quite an angry kid, quite a troubled kid who is easily goaded into doing stupid things and stuff. He's actually playing one mood through much of the film. There's only the bit where that girl turns up after she leaves the other guy, Takeshi, where he's working on a car and he notices her. That's the only moment in the film where I can feel like the emotion of the thought that's going on behind the eyes of the character, and the rest of the time he's just like he's just insert actor to play this role, and we don't get much of a feel for the role. Bearing in mind he's been flown halfway across the world to keep him out of prison with his military father and all the rest of it. He's in a fish out of water scenario. And none of that is sold. He gets there and he's quite relaxed and he's like, so where do I sleep then? You know what I mean? And I don't ever feel any sense that the character is struggling to settle and adapt at all.
Mm. So no, you kind of get a flavour of it by him being called like Gaijin and being laughed at by his classmates and things like that. And obviously he forms a bond. I can't remember her name. Neela, that was it.
The character's name.
Yeah, Neela, that was it.
That's it.
Obviously because they are both outsiders, both foreigners.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I don't really get that sense. I would agree, Dave, unfortunately.
I just I don't know what his real accent is, but that seemed a little bit much as well. He was really kind of he was a bit deep South Hick in the way he sounded. But again, there's some validity to that because we've had leads from California and then we've had Miami. Somewhere in the South makes sense, I guess. Perhaps if they'd carried on with that, they might have done Chicago. You know what I mean? But I mean, it starts off with a set piece we'll get into in a minute. And before we really know the character, he's being sent halfway across the world to not find that too difficult. The only fish out of water thing I really got was the driving. that like you're in a different world in terms of what the skill set is here. He's not bad. I certainly don't think, my God, he's really wooden or his line delivery's terrible, but he's not a standout. I don't know, he's not ruinous in my opinion, although if someone said they found him wooden, I wouldn't argue, because it is just a perception thing, and he's not a standout, and a lot of people will find that bland, and people conflate bland and wooden sometimes. But I don't know what they saw in him. Perhaps, I mean, I don't know. It's a 60.
Availability.
It's an $85 million film, which is not super expensive, but we're more expensive again than the second one. You know, they're still going up in what they cost. And this is like 14 years ago, you know, and when the budget was set longer ago than that. And I mean, perhaps they don't want bankable. He's meant to be playing a school kid, although he's clearly too old for that.
No, I think he was like 23 or something. He's in his 20s, isn't he?
Yeah, he's about 23 filming this, I'd have thought. Let's have a look. November 82, so he might even have still been 22. But
I kept thinking of that Steve Buscemi meme. Just about like, hello, fellow kids.
Yeah.
Hello, fellow students.
To be honest, he just about passes muster to me. Just. Certainly I've seen shots from the seventh film where I go, yeah, no, that definitely doesn't look like a school kid anymore, even though he still looks similar. So he might have been 22, maybe just about 23 filming this. I don't know what they're seeing in him to like anchor a film to him, particularly as most of the people in this film are unknowns. But he's not terrible. There's a step up in quality of filmmaking, I think, from last week. I don't know if you'd agree with that. That's it, really. From me, as sort of opening thoughts, I think it's a bit better than last week. I think there's a bit of star power. It's a little bit like when we went from the Incredible Hulk to Iron Man 2, and all of a sudden,
step up in quality.
Well, I don't know that it's a step up in quality as much as suddenly there was some star wattage, because like the screen presence of Downey, there's a bit of this in reverse here. In that I think this might be a more competent film than last week, but last week had like Paul Walker, who had a little bit more screen presence than anyone here.
I guess the star power would come from Sonny Chiba and Keiko Kitagawa.
Yeah. What do you guys think, as in general terms? Enjoy it?
I probably enjoyed it more than last week.
I don't think that was like last week was getting on my tits. Dude, bro.
Yeah, sorry to force you to watch it many times. But I'd say this is the first time in this franchise for the writer and for the director. And I think it's probably from this point, or maybe from next week, you kind of really see him kind of make his mark on the series as well, which is quite interesting to go by. But yeah, I would say it's probably more competently made than last week's film.
Yeah.
But I think this is kind of more as a character piece. For once, it seems that the cars take a backseat, and it's all about the relationships and the characters. I think I enjoyed that aspect a lot more. Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to make the point that it is a change of writer this week. I was just going to agree with that, but I was going to make another point that's actually kind of escaped me, but it was pertinent to something you just said, but it escapes me, so carry on.
Oh no, that's it. Over to you, Chris.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's basically like, I mean, the first Fast and Furious, did Point Break. The second Fast and Furious, don't even know what I did, but
the Red Shoe Diaries.
Ooh.
But this one kind of is basically that kind of Karate Kid type thing. It's like, kid moves to a new town, knows a little bit about one thing and gets a bit involved, and comes better at one thing, and then defeats like the champion of the new town he's moved into. It's that same sort of arc, which is fine because that's a story that everyone kind of like likes and gets on board with. So in the back of my head, I thought this is basically Fast and Furious, doing the Karate Kid, and yeah, it's absolutely fine. I do think the lead is just a bit flat. Something about his. I think it's just like his delivery. It just is a bit just falls flat. doesn't like sort of land very well. And as you said, there's no real you get no sort of feeling of like what's going through. He just seems to be a little bit cocky, a little bit sure.
A little bit cocky. Yeah, I mean, he's very cocky when he turns up, and the film, strangely enough, doesn't play that up. But he turns up and he's like, "Can the guy drive?" And he's like, "You're about to do something you have no skill set in," and he's like the best at. And the film could have almost made him look more of a prick over that than it does. It's just something that happens. There's a visual humour to him completely trashing the car.
Yeah.
The only pun that did occur to me is obviously Han in this film is kind of he's a mentor figure, actually.
Yeah.
He is a mentor figure to our main guy, which made me think Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
That's very clever. I like that.
He is. Well, I thought he's a bit of an Obi-Wan, and I thought, well, Obi-Han. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially he is.
But yeah, okay, so we discuss this film sequentially, folks.
We shall, but we've got to drift while doing it.
Yeah, we're in I don't think I knew where we were. I needed to look it up. I mean, you get some idea from the accent, but it's Arizona at the start of this film. Maybe that's in a screen credit. I don't remember seeing it, though, but we're in Arizona. And this guy is just, well, goofing off against another guy, basically. They end up having a race over a woman. Yeah. Which I just think, like, to be honest, if a woman is offering herself a prize in the race, she's not a prize I want. Do you know what I mean? She's not like...
She's passed around, unfortunately, like the trophy.
How's that relationship going to be afterwards, then?
Yeah, it's... I know, it's like, it is a typical sort of thing. He's sort of like, he's a bit cocky, he starts talking to a girl, the jealous boyfriend shows up.
The jealous boyfriends in this film are ridiculous. We know younger men can be a bit jealous and over the top and possessive, but that just goes with the territory of being young and insecure, I think. But they're always really over the top. They're always ready to fight almost immediately. It's
like bro and all this kind of thing, like, proper Chad type, like that kind of like.
Yeah.
And fun fact, it's actually one of Tim Taylor's kids from Home Improvements.
No, really?
Yeah,
it's really?
Yeah, it's
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Oh, I didn't realise. That was a fun fact.
Okay, I thought you meant the actor's kid in real life. No, he was in that film, that program.
Yeah.
Okay. I never really watched Home Improvement, but I know it was extraordinarily popular at one time.
Yeah.
So they're bragging about each other's cars and all the rest of it, and then
it's about the size of the engine.
And he is a bit cocky because he's having a go at him about, you don't really know anything about your car and all the rest of it. And it just basically, he drives off and then something gets lobbed through his window.
Yeah, it's a baseball. And then the Belen boyfriend kind of sees that as like a huge win. It's like, yeah, I just threw a ball at your window.
Yeah, they're always like, whoa, the investment of the crowds in stuff that happens in these films is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's always, whatever happens between two people, it's always like the whole school are fascinated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
I actually thought this was just a little bit over the top, actually. Like that would be something that would be like just, I got him. It's like, no, that's criminal damage. You couldn't just do that. But it leads into a race, doesn't it? And it's a race over she becomes the prize, really.
Yeah.
And
she kind of goads as well. You think, like, as you say, Dave, you think, like,
yeah, I don't really want her, thanks,
yeah, you mean you were kind of half expecting, like, had this just been a clean race that he won, he might just turn around and say, actually, nah, you're all right, love.
You're all right.
I just want to show him up, but you're all right.
Yeah, the race is okay though, only in that nothing stands out as wrong, and there's a little bit of inventiveness. He ends up driving through like part of a building site and things like that. It's all the usual stuff: close up of gear levers. Always having another gear to turn up into, always being able to depress the gas pedal down a bit further. So it's got some of the cliches, but it works okay.
Yeah, the first part of the race was all done in first gear.
Yeah, it must be. You must have just crawling along with a screaming engine.
I'm just thinking of like what's his face? So he did 4-3. What for Ragnarok? What's his name? Oh,
Taika Waititi.
yeah, Taika. Yeah,
that's the one.
imagine if directing doing that sort of gag of them like going, like sort of struggling, then cutting back, and then like literally just crawling face.
I tell you what I thought of when I watched this, because like I thought of, is it Dogma, where Jay and Silent Bob like drive a car, and the car is screaming and smoke's coming out of it, and she says to like Jay, "What gear are you in?" And she's like,
"Gears."
And he's like, "Gears."
Gear.
And then when they pull over to the side of the road and the car's fucked, he's like, "Like I've ever driven a car anyway." I think that's how a lot of like that country would respond to a gear stick. So it's just something you vaguely pull on. I mean, some of these cars looked like automatics anyway. But the race was all right. They kept him behind long enough that like you are willing him on a bit, even though we've had no character work at all.
And the crashes at the end would just seem absolutely fucking brutal.
They did look brutal, and it's a different environment again, because it's kind of a dusty environment, but not a Californian sort of desert environment. And I don't know, it just looked a little bit different. I was all right with this as like setting us off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it ends in a crash, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, for epic crash.
And he flips the car quite badly, and then we're at a police station, and we see his mother, who looks like total trailer trash. I don't know if that's what the film is trying to show us. It's just like she's alone, a single mum struggling with this kid that's like not really towing the line. But I really hate talking like this, but it's the only way I can put it. The wardrobe choices they give her make her look very, very rough and down market. And I don't know if that's deliberate or not.
It's just like a trope. It just sort of like, we only sort of see her once, so you have to kind of like.
She's not a character.
No,
she's just insert mother here.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah, she does kind of look a little bit. I wouldn't say rough, but I know it's a bit harsh.
I know it's not an easy way to express it, but yeah, I mean, and I don't want to judge people.
You didn't really
on,
sort
like,
of see her again,
wardrobe
do you?
choices.
Really, it's just like.
But the film has put her in a certain wardrobe to communicate something to the audience.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're trying to communicate she's poor, she's down market. I don't know what they're trying to communicate.
It's kind of meant to be that she's at her wit's end, and the only thing that she can do to kind of rescue her son from the situation is to ship him off to her dad in Japan. So
which happens in no time at all.
I think the impression I get, I think it's probably that's it again. It's a movie trope thing, but it's the single working mother who probably works at a bar somewhere. So therefore, she probably
so it's kind of movie shorthand for that, really, isn't it?
She probably wears like like a low cut top and short skirt.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't sexual. It weren't like her tits were hanging out or anything.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. I think that's the image you have. Like get.
But it was a little bit brassy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he arrives to see his dad. Some woman's leaving who we never see again. So
yeah, what's all that about? That was very strange.
I don't know if that's implying he's in a relationship with someone we never see him again, or he just shags around. We don't know.
Wait, yeah, it's very odd. I was like,
It's a bit awkward though, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very awkward. Is it just to to kind of set up that awkwardness between him and his dad, or what?
I mean, to be fair, he could have told his son sort of, just give me 10 minutes.
Yeah, so give 10 minutes while I finish up.
Yeah.
Naughty.
So what else? So he's now in Tokyo. This feels like it happens very quickly. We've barely been introduced to this guy. He's a bit of a hothead. He has a car crash. He goes straight to his dad. He's immediately, where do I sleep? Like, there's no hint of, I don't know what the time difference is, but there's no hint of jet lag or like, where am I? This feels weird.
No, I think they mentioned that they're a whole day ahead, but that's about it really. So.
Oh, he's crossed the international date line then, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably not that far different in time. And then what? He wakes up in the morning. There is a school uniform. That's a difference from an American setting, but it's not a very formal one. And then he heads off to school, where everybody except the teacher speaks English all the time. There's only twice we see anything that isn't. In fact, Sonny Chiba, when he talks to Takeshi, they speak in not the English language for a while, but that's about it.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are some scenes where they speak Japanese, but yeah, a lot of the time there is that kind of they speak English, and it's like, why not just speak in your native tongue, you know?
So he meets Neela. Where did she say she's from? She's definitely not Far East Asian. I don't know where she's. I don't know where she's from.
I don't think she admits it.
ethnically
She
speaking.
reveals it right away, does she? So
And he meets Twinkie.
Twinkie.
Yeah.
yeah, that's his name.
I mean, did they hire Bow
Hello,
Wow?
Bow
I
Wow.
think we better give him a less sensible name. I don't know.
He's just
So
gone, hi, I'm Bow Wow.
he's African American. He's like army family and all the rest of it. And they sort of he's got his new best friend and a potential love interest in the first couple of scenes. So I suppose at least they're telling us that quite quick. And his father has warned him not to get involved with cars, so he immediately goes and gets involved in cars.
I mean, it does feel like it's the beginning of the film again all go, because he sort of like he goes to this new school, he starts flirting with a girl, gets in trouble with a boyfriend. He have a it's literally like, all right, this is exactly what we've just seen already.
Yeah, we've just it's the only film that has a foreign remake of itself within the same film. It's like they shot the first scene of the film and you go, I'd love to do a Far East remake of this, and they've done it within the same film. And the guy gets right into his face, and I noticed it at the time, but then didn't notice it again until later in the film. This guy is doing Joey Tribbiani smell the fart acting. Right? He constantly looks like he can
does look a bit
smell
like that.
shit all the way through. And that's meant to be his intimidating face. And that implies anyone who's got any kind of problem with somebody else immediately wears a face that is them knowing they're evil. It's really strange.
It's kind of like he has this kind of like cross between a smirk and almost like rolling your eyes kind of look. Do you know what I mean?
It's very strange. There's no range to this guy at all. He's wearing the same expression in most scenes.
It's just look at me, I'm smug. Look at me, I'm smug. Look at me, I'm a bit of a twat. I'm smug. And it works.
So-
It does make you want to think, oh, he's a twat, that guy. You know what I mean? He does, you know, I mean, you know, it is one-dimensional, but it does make you want to just...
Thankfully, they've gone somewhere that's got an underground racing scene. They could have sent him to the Netherlands and it could have just been a cycling film. Fast and Furious, cycling quickly. Yeah, you know, like Amsterdam skid. Yeah. So they've all got these really kind of fucking garish, ugly cars, and we're straight into... Now, the way this film ends later on, it does seem like Drift King is actually like a formal title.
Your Majesty.
Can this guy drive? Yeah, we know him as DK. Stands for Drift King. I got him confused with DP for a minute. So when they said Drift King, I was like, oh, I was imagining something way dirtier. They have a race.
Yeah.
But he doesn't even know what drifting is. That bit jarred, because it's like, everyone's heard of drifting, haven't they? It's kind of a variant of power sliding. Everyone's heard of
You
it.
do it in Mario Kart.
He was
That's my
like,
knowledge.
drifting?
I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't, but then again, it's not my scene. I don't...
Fair enough. That's why I asked. I mean, if I'm asking, there's a possibility one of you's going to go, no, I hadn't heard of it. I'm not making fun of
Well,
anything.
it's like,
thought
I
it was
suppose
fun.
unless you are kind of like involved in like motorsport or like, especially you, Dave, because you're really into Formula One, aren't you? But like, I don't know, or if you play like driving games, or if if you're into racing and that yourself, you might have come across it a little bit. I don't know, probably mainly through Mario Kart on my account, unfortunately.
There does come a point in life where you can't remember where you pick things up from.
No.
So it's a term I know, but like God knows where I did, and it might be somewhere most people don't. Don't matter anyway. But we basically get a road race. Well, we get a road race down. Most of it's around the. Well, it's not a road race; it's a car park race. With a big turnout, and immediately we find out that Sean doesn't have the skill set for the format of this race.
Yeah.
There's one really good shot in the film. It's broken up a little bit that's probably how they ended up putting it together on the budget they had. But the way he slides up the up ramp is actually quite impressive because he maintains a consistent angle. And I'm thinking, if there was a stuntman who did that for real, that's quite impressive. It's not the most dangerous stunt you'll ever see, but it requires precision. And Sean absolutely fucks the car. And it's the one bit of the film that actually works as humour. When he finally arrives at like the scene of the winner's like joy, and his car is like fucking needing a walking frame to get there. That's quite funny.
Yeah, especially when this is like meant to be like quite a prestigious car. You know, it's Han's car as well.
Yeah, I was going to say he's borrowed this car from Han, who is in some sort of business with Takeshi, the bad guy. And Han is like watching Sean interested, not sexually. I don't think they don't make love. Sean makes love to himself, probably.
You don't see a lot of that in this film, do you?
No, it's not. It's not actually as homoerotic, I suppose, would be the only word. Him and Han.
Yeah, I would say there is less homoeroticism in this film.
Well, they have a chemistry, and they become
Vin Diesel
friends.
shows up, then it.
Until he shows up.
We'll come on to that because the last scene of the film, I thought they were going to it's obviously inherently. Vin Diesel in the flesh must just be irresistible. He must have some serious pheromones.
Well, he is, clearly.
Han and him have like the odd heart-to-heart, and they do have a chemistry, but it's not shot in a way that I find it funny. It's not the same, but that might just be better filmmaker. Might just be that.
Yeah.
So where do we go from the car being fucking ruined?
Han tells him, "Don't leave town."
Right.
So basically, the next day comes home to his dad. He kind of sort of like, "Where have you been? You've been driving, and haven't you? I told you, all that kind of stuff." And then this next day at school, he gets picked up by Han, and then he gives him a mission to pick up some money.
Right.
From a big sumo wrestler looking guy.
Yeah, we're not that into what Han's up to. If he's been partnering up with the other guy, it's probably not super legal, but it's not about Han or Takeshi's plots particularly, is it?
No.
This film. But he gets to bond with Han by having to work with Han because Han helped him out when he arrived. Yeah. The only clue to Han's future is he said later on when they do have a heart-to-heart, he says to him, he asks where he's from or what he's doing in Tokyo, and Han says something like, "You ever seen a Western where they escape to Mexico?"
All the Westerns.
Yeah, and he said, "Tokyo is my Mexico." In other words, he's running from something. But
he's got a mysterious past, which he's trying to get away from.
Which makes me wonder, how much of this did they actually think ahead? Like, did you know they were actually going to go further on this series? But I suppose we'll get there towards the end, I think.
Yes, we'll get there. We'll talk about it. I think the spoiler alert is, I don't know. I think when we get there, we'll just be talking about possibilities because there's no real way of knowing. I tend to think, if I had to guess, that the character just went down well. They weren't churning them out as quickly at this point. The next film's 3 years later. That gives you time to sort of retool it to include Han.
I think he did turn out to be a bit of a fan favourite, really, didn't he? I think it was as a result of like a sort of fan appeal, I guess.
Maybe they did know because of the last scene of the film. Let's talk about it then, because Vin Diesel's involvement gives me pause for thought. Because all these like quality franchises elsewhere hadn't really come to much by this point, and he was probably angling to get back in.
But yeah, because the line of dialogue it's really kind of foreshadowing everything else. It is like he was family, and I'm like, well, this came first. This would come from nowhere. Yeah.
Okay. So where do we go from there then? So he's working for Han. And then what? Han basically teaches him to drift on a circuit, like a banked circuit.
Yeah, he goes driving for him, and he sort of starts teaching him how to sort of like, he's trying at docks, He gives him a car.
Yeah. And he does go on a date with Neela, which was really odd because I didn't immediately twig. I thought, has she broken up with the other guy? And it's like, well, no, she hasn't really. But they do have a little bit of chemistry on the date. But it leads to, we get a bit of her backstory, which doesn't really bear repeating because she's just the love interest. It's not that important. Funny you mentioned Karate Kid. Like Karate Kid 2 was a bit like that. There was a love interest in that film because there needed to be a love interest in that film. It wasn't that important.
I love it when films do that. Completely sells out love interest in the previous film.
I noticed. Yeah, no, I definitely referenced the second film rather than the first because the first film it's a big part of him settling in the town and stuff like that. But the second film is they go to the Far East and it's like best to have a woman here that they have some chemistry with. And that's a bit like this, but it does lead with to Sean getting the shit kicked out of him. They went on this date. We get a bit of her backstory, which is about how she ended up with Takeshi, which is just to humanise her, and it's like she's almost not there by choice. And after the beating up, she leaves Takeshi, moves in with Sean, and that's the one scene of the film that will stick with me when he's working under the car and he notices her walking into the garage. That's actually quite nicely played. It's quite an understated moment. So you think, well, no, there's something there. And it tells us that, like, they're both good guys. Like, she's safe there. They're not just as bad as Takeshi, but we're on their side.
Yeah.
I think we go to the Sonny Chiba scene next.
We get stuff with Han and Takeshi, don't they? 'Cause they make... Obviously, you get a bit about the business, and they arrange, like, a race with his henchman, so to speak. You know, the one with the really crappy hair.
It looks like a video game.
It does like, a little bit.
You know what I'm on about, don't you, Becca? Those sort of
it does. Yeah, I kind of got that vibe. It's like I was playing like a PS2, PS3 game, I guess.
Yeah, and he really overacts as well. This guy is like, when he's enraged, he's really enraged. He was beating up Twinkie, wasn't he? Something to do with Twinkie selling something, and
like an iPod.
Yeah, it was an iPod, and Sean steps in and literally hands him his, I think, and says, "Don't try not to break this one."
Yeah.
But I think that's after he beat. No, he does. No, I think that's before the race. But they eventually race. The Yakuza turn up. Sonny Chiba turns up to give Takeshi a hard time. I had to look up what he gave him a hard time about, though, because I watched it on a rip with no subtitles. So there's a whole scene that's a conversation where he's clearly being upbraided for something, probably something Han and Sean related.
I had to kind of look it up. There's some. Obviously, I'm not no linguistic expert, but I kind of recognise some words. And I've got a friend he was planning on going to Japan after the Olympics, but obviously probably won't be going till later in the year, maybe even next year. And I was like, what does this mean? What does that mean?
Yeah,
and he's able to tell me. So
next year, yeah.
Yeah, it'll probably be next year now, I think. So.
So where do we go from there? So it's all to do with the Yakuza are obviously funding Takeshi somehow, and he's been embarrassed.
Misplaced funds, basically. Or the books aren't straight.
It's not that important. It's something to do with Han has stolen from him, but it doesn't really matter. Not to be honest. They go to confront Sean after this about it all, and then it just sort of ends up in a big chase. But yeah, we have missed the street race with the second in command. But it is storytelling. It is to tell us Sean's getting the hang of drifting.
Yeah,
and he's fought the underboss, and the film's going to end in him at the boss level.
Yeah.
So it's pretty efficient stuff.
Yeah,
but we're actually
it does rattle along, doesn't it? I think it's kind of, as you say, it's very very efficient. Nothing's wasted, quite frankly.
I don't think so. I mean, we're quite close to the end of the film now, but there's no fat on it.
No,
it's a way better told story than last week. I don't know that it's a wildly better film, but it is better told, definitely. Because we're getting very very close to the death of Han now. We're quite late in the film.
Yeah, Yeah, Han's death actually happens. It always feels like it happens a lot sooner than you think it would.
Yeah, because you think it's near the end of the film and maybe a final scene of revenge for Han, and that's it. But it's a good 20-25 minutes from the end of the film, I think. Yeah, they go to confront. There's a distraction. They get away. There's a big car chase that ends up with Han being T-boned by a car we don't recognise. It's because they're racing down like busy streets. I think this is the one where he does the slide round the corner at a junction. Sean. So that's again storytelling. He's grasped it. It's a great visual. The only problem is they cut away from it at one point, but the audience or the crowd actually sort of fan away from the car as the car's turning. As a visual, it's a little bit like where, if you look at Kill Bill 1, there's a bit where she's fighting the Crazy 88, and before they start, she slightly moves the sword, and they all instinctively sway back.
Yeah.
And the audience do something. The crowd do something a bit like that here. But he's T-boned by a car. We'll find out who was in that car in about 3 or 4 films' time.
Yeah, because it's nothing special car, is it? It's just like kind of like your average.
It's just a street car. They're just driving down the street. They're all in performance cars. This is not a performance car. But he gets hit and T-boned in such a way that there's a leak of petrol. But Sean sees it, he heads towards the car, but it blows up before he can get there, killing Han without any question whatsoever.
Or so we thought.
Well,
Dun, dun, dun.
it's a major retcon. I mean, he's stuck in the car blows up. I mean, for fuck's sake. Then what? Sean's father wants to send him home. Yeah. And this is where the storytelling is like very fast universe, because he's a schoolboy who's just got seriously threatened by organized crime that's ended in a death, and when his father says, "I'm sending you home," it's like, let me sort this out, and his father says, "Yes, I will let you go up against the Yakuza." That is that's an only in the fast universe.
Yeah, I mean, from an emotional perspective, it does kind of make sense.
Oh, it makes sense in terms of this story, but this world has to be hermetically sealed for it to work, because there's not a parent in the world with any kind of responsibility that would allow this.
No.
And I don't think there are many fully grown teenagers in this world that would even argue it. I think they would either sneak off and try and do it quietly, or they would say, "Okay, I'm going."
But no, he wants to finish what he started.
Which is apparently to have a race.
Yes.
Again, it's like someone's been killed and it's like, I'll get revenge by driving a bit faster than you. I mean...
Driving a faster car.
I'll get revenge by doing...
Can you imagine even if by accident you killed someone and then like the family come for revenge and the revenge they get is to beat you at your favourite sport? You imagine that you murder someone and you think, "Oh my god, I'm really going to get paid back for this," and your punishment is to like lose at tennis. At least in theory, it does go a bit worse than that. To be fair, he drives a really cool car in the last race. It's a Ford. Sean, that is, and it's this kind of. They big it up with, you're on his territory and all that, but it's kind of like this day-night race around sort of some mountain hills. Again, it's a different visual, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean they've been practicing on the mountain anyway, haven't they?
Yeah.
But it's at night and it actually looks quite nice. It's a nice sort of transition from the car park to it's more a natural setting. And of course, the Sonny Chiba's there. He's like integrating it. Sort of, it's like loser leaves town, that kind of thing. And it's all about order.
Yeah, and you don't quite know what the Yakuza are going to make of this after the race and stuff like that as well. So again, if you're invested in this stuff, and I'm trying not to like damn it with faint praise or patronise it. It's not doing that much for me, but I can see it's like being reasonably efficiently and logically told, and the action is like decent. None of this is transcendent. There's way better to come in this series, but and I'm not anywhere near as interested in the characters as, say, the first film. But just from a competence perspective, it's better than what we've just watched last week.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I don't know that I want to say much more about this race. I don't know if you guys do, but it ends up in a race where I'm assuming Takeshi's killed. It's not clear.
No, he's not. He crashes, but he doesn't. He's not died because his punishment is to be sort of he has to leave town,
Humiliated,
and dishonor, and that's kind of like probably, in terms of like of where it's set, it's probably more of a harsher. It's like to fail with dishonor. It's like you choose death over that, really.
Yeah.
So
it's like a Klingon being removed from his own family line.
Yeah.
Yes. Or the family line being dishonored. He's allowed to stay in the city, and he's now the Drift King. And I just thought we're quite close to getting a fucking coronation ceremony or something. That's a bit cheesy, but again, it's a mixed audience. There's going to be young guys watching this, and that's fine.
He's hanging out. He's new sort of quote unquote champion, and there's someone who wants to race him.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
And it's said that he was a family of Han's family or something like that. And when he pulls alongside this car, and if you didn't know what you were going to see, the design of the car is kind of a clue because it's very much in sort of Dominic Toretto's wheelhouse, the sort of thing he drives. It's Dom, and they give each other a look. They look at each other just too long. It's like the end of Seven. But at the end of Seven, you've got all of these films where they built that bond. I don't know why they look at each other for so long here. It's the one bit of the film that I'm like, I think it's meant to be mutual respect. And that he's on the same level as Dominic Toretto.
Well, for me, it's just it's from the moment where they finally sort of just went, we're playing up this homoeroticism, right? Proper, well, good, proper. For the dialogue is such as, sort of, I didn't know Han used to was it ride with American muscle. It's
and there's Vin Diesel in a wife beater looking quite muscular.
Yeah. It's like, well, clearly you didn't know Han that well. What's the dialogue? I can't.
He did when he hung with me, or
that was it. Yeah, and it's just it's just so on the fucking nose that they're clearly well aware of this now.
And it's the first mention of Diesel giving it family, although it's not him that says it, but it's said about him. And he's obviously introduced himself that way when he's arrived in Tokyo. Again, this will be slightly retconned later as to why he's in Tokyo. At this point, I think he's there to sort of collect Han's body, basically. When I finished this film and I went straight on to 4. No, I didn't watch all of 4. I just watched a few minutes of it. And it is like going straight on to Iron Man 2 in that suddenly there's some star power there. And it was a bit of a relief, to be honest. I don't know how I'm going to respond to that film till I rewatch it, because I said last week the second film isn't the worst rated in the series, it's the second worst rated. This film is only rated 1% higher. Again, it's just the aggregator tool. I mean, for all this, I don't trust Rotten Tomatoes. That's all it is. It's an aggregator tool. And there were slightly more good reviews for this film than the previous one, but only slightly. The worst reviewed film in the series is the 4th. So it'll be quite interesting to get to that next week. But as for this, I was very... So what about it? But it's competent, and I will finally give in to damning it with faint praise and stop there. I don't think there's much more to say about it. It's not a bad entry. It's not a particularly good one. I can see wholeheartedly why Lucas Black didn't really become a thing. He's certainly not a leading man. But we've got the director on board finally who's going to take this series on to better things. And those better things are not too far away now. So I don't think it's the best film we've seen of the 3 because the cast just don't have the same presence. And that there aren't the same emotional stakes. But it's probably the most competently written so far. And it's certainly better made than the John Singleton effort. And I'll probably leave it there.
Becca?
yeah, it's a film. Um, yeah, I don't know. It kind of did surprise me a little bit because I was, as I said at the top of the show, it was, I was all ready for this to kind of be all about like the neon and perhaps learn a little bit about kind of like the Japanese street racing or like Itasha, that kind of side of the culture. It's not something I know very much about. But have I done that? No. Do I feel this film has taught me that? No. But no, as I say,
it wears its culture so light, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah, I kind of. The films that we've seen from the series so far, I do get perhaps with maybe the exception of last week's film, but largely as the series we have seen so far, it would give you the opinion that like, each film would be set like in a different state or in a different city, a different location, different country altogether.
But it's pointless if you don't differentiate between those cities in any meaningful way, isn't it?
No, it's one of those things really. It's kind of, I think from the previous films, I would say that each location is definitely a character in the film. Here I do kind of feel like I'm sounding really stupid or if I'm missing something.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
But I get a sense of the country, but I don't get a sense that Japan is a character in this film. But
we're somewhere new, and we've got a cast that look very different from a stereotypical mix of any American city we know. But in the day-to-day details, apart from putting him in a uniform, he's living the exact same way as he would in the West.
Exactly. I mean, obviously you've got like Sonochiba and Kitagawa, I can't even say her name, Kitagawa as well. But yeah, apart from those kind of scenes where they do mark it out as Yakuza, for example, he'd probably be like the kind of biggest star, apart from the MC Hammer posters that you see at the start. But apart from having key actors like those, and obviously you've got a little bit of the language as well, and also about the school where the teacher kind of scolds her for not wearing, obviously you take off your shoes and you have to kind of wear like special like indoor kind of type shoes or slippers. But yeah, I don't really get a sense of the fact that they use the location to the full advantage. But that said, as I say, it's all about, I kind of feel on this occasion it's less about the characters, less about the location, less about the cars, even more about the character. And in this respect, I think that Chris Morgan and Justin Lin have definitely worked well to create. Obviously, it's not probably the best film in the franchise, but to create.
I can assure you, it really isn't.
No, it's quite like sort of a film where like there is no, as you say, there's no fat on that bone. Everything that you see on screen, except really does need to be there. It's kind of perfunctory. It whizzes along at quite a pace.
It might be the blandest in the series overall. That's not the same as saying the most boring. It just means even though it's the only one in that country and it's one of the few that are predominantly, well, no, I suppose 5 is as well, but an awful lot of them are set in like the States somewhere, and this is suddenly like or Europe or something like that.
Yeah.
So this is
to London at some point.
Although they go to London a few times, although this is very different, it actually doesn't really stand out in that the cast are so what. We won't see most of them again except Han. So we got a leading man we don't really care about, and so it's the blandest, but it is like entirely competent in what it's trying to do. Whereas last week we were laughing at it. There's not much to laugh at here. That last scene's sort of funny, and there's a couple of bits, and I did laugh at like Dad saying, "Yes, of course you can go off and like fight organised crime by trying to drive faster," but on the terms in which the film presents itself, it's doing everything pretty competently.
Yeah, I think nuts and bolts. I mean, it's not shooting for the stars, but it kind of gets it knows what it has to do, and it gets it done. And it makes the best of what it's got. I think that's probably the best you can say about it, really. I mean, it's not the most ambitious film of the franchise. But then
you could skip 2 and 3. You could. I mean, you would. The only thing was Han constantly from now on will talk about the call of going back to Japan. And when I watched 6, I didn't get the reference because I'd never seen it. So you'd wonder what that was about. And there are a couple of things you would wonder about. In the 7th film, he goes to see Lucas Black, Sean. And that you wouldn't quite get. But actually, as a through line in a story, 2 is a very different Brian anyway, and then this is a character we're not really going to focus on again. So they are the two films that aren't wildly essential.
Yeah. Two more so, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
But
I didn't dislike this when I watched them a few years ago. I don't like this leading guy very much. I think a recast. He doesn't do anything really wrong, but like there are casting options that might have engaged me more. Don't ask me what they are. I don't know, but there are alternatives where I'm sure you could put someone else in that role of a similar age, and it might have worked better for me. But yeah, it's not that engaging, but it's all right. And when I first watched it a few years ago, I actively disliked it. I really disliked 2 and 3. At this time, it was just, we don't need this film anymore, and it's not that good. But there was so much wrong last week. This is actually, at least, competence is a win at this stage. But I wouldn't have come out of this film expecting much more from the franchise, would you?
No, exactly. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why I never bothered watching it in the first place, because I just wasn't expecting much at all. I mean, I'll say by Fast 5 was when it actually started to seem interesting and seem like it could be actually be fun and not just cars and more cars.
Well, it stops being about street racing. In fact, it does next week, really. But then that's because we've already been introduced to those characters.
And obviously family.
There's a link from 1 to 4 because he's on the run at the end of 1, and so on 4 it's difficult. He's still on the run, sort of thing, and building new crews and stuff. Yeah, I'm done with this film. Really, I don't know that I feel any need to watch it again. I would if there was a reason. If there was some tweet along going on, I'd go, yeah, why not? I'm quite happy to watch it. Don't know that I'll ever really watch it again, though. Whereas some of the Fast films, I'm quite happy to rewatch. Maybe that's because I'm so ill-informed, though, Chris.
Well, do you think if you had more information, you would?
People always. Yeah. Well, people knock what they don't understand, I find.
Well, I mean that is true. We have humans have a nasty habit of doing that. So, would you like more information on this film?
I think we need to challenge the frailties of human nature by keeping an open mind and being willing to grow. Yes.
So, what would help you do that?
Somebody who's seen the film once and was pretty half-assed about it as well.
Well, that makes sense
to me.
You're
in luck.
Becca!
You're in luck. Oh my god. I did struggle.
Yeah, well,
I think we mentioned most of it as well.
Go on, just go on. This is perfunctory as bollocks anyway tonight.
This film is pretty like the film is quite perfunctory, so definitely. Yeah, fun fact number 1, as I mentioned earlier, Keiko Kitagawa is also known for playing amazing Sailor Mars and the live-action Sailor Moon movies. Growing up in sort of 80s and 90s, obviously huge love for Sailor Moon. If you can check out anime live-action films, they are fabulous. She is a 90s icon. Fun fact number 2, obviously there's the first Fast and Furious movie not to be written by Gary Scott Thompson. Fun fact number 3, the song Barracuda by the 567-8s. You may recognise them from Kill Bill Volume 1. And the band also appear alongside Sonny Chiba, as we know from our Tarantino retrospective series. Fun fact number 4, as we mentioned earlier, I'm repeating myself quite a lot here. Tokyo Drift is actually the 6th film in the series. Obviously, Han is introduced and dies in this film, but obviously turns up in 5 and 6 and a couple of the later films as well. I think in Fast 6, so you've got the post-credit scene, which kind of does a bit of retconning, as Dave mentioned. And plus, Sun Kang also turns up in Justin Lin's first film, Better Luck Tomorrow, which we didn't discuss. It's basically the same, even though it's not in the same timeline or maybe the same universe, it's essentially the same character. It is obviously a riff on the famous Nerf herder. And also, I didn't know this, but Sean's dad is in the Navy, he's in the military. Apparently he's called Major, but the US military doesn't, well, certainly in the Navy, don't have a major rank. So, yeah, a bit of a minor infraction there. So that's randomly 5 not very useful facts about this film.
So is that the reason why he pulls out a gun then? If he's
Probably.
Because one of the things that struck me was the fact that in Japan where you just cannot get a gun at all. I mean, I understand like sort of the Yakuza maybe having them because they're gangsters.
You kind of associate it more with having swords, perhaps, or another kind of weapon.
Well, yeah,
not to sound culturally insensitive.
Well, no, but I just know, like, apparently, it's damn near impossible to even own a firearm, and he just sort of randomly pulls one out as a civilian. Essentially, I thought, hang on, where the fuck's that come from?
Yeah, it could be. He might have acquired it illegally, or it could just be due to the fact that he's, in the military.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was doing I'm rubbish with military ranks, things like that. But yeah, apparently they didn't have major in the ranks, which is interesting. But yeah, no, I wondered that as well. It kind of jumped out at me as a bit of a strange, odd moment. Like, where the hell did you get that from? Where if you pulled out like a knife or a sword, or perhaps a gun, maybe has more urgency or has more threat to it. I don't know.
Yeah, but then again, I suppose like the dad holding a samurai sword would just look ridiculous.
that probably would. Yeah, that probably would have looked a bit weird, I guess. So interesting. Well, I thought it was interesting anyway. Yeah, that was my 5 rubbish fun facts.
Yeah, I didn't know what number you were on, actually, Becca. That's why I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. You said the number. I didn't. That's why you got a long silence after me saying it. Anyway, so, yes, that's why I didn't leap in with the traditional "That's fun, folks."
That's fun, folks.
But
no,
that was fun.
I was trying to whiz through it as quickly as I could.
It was fun. It was, Chris.
You bloody waffling.
It really was. All right, then. As for social media, you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find me at Cinetronics on Twitter. You can also find all the old episodes at cinetronics.co.uk.
And you can find us at Expected Talk on Twitter and also on Facebook. And also check us out on all the good places you would usually get your podcasts from. So Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, obviously YouTube. We're trying to add more places as we go along. But should you want to get in touch with us by email, you can also email us at expectedtalk@gmail.com.
Finally, we're at least next time we're going to get to a film that actually feels like an ongoing part of a franchise, and that they're going to try something new rather than these bizarre one-shots. Which means, Becca.
Yes. Do you expect to talk will return with Fast and Furious?